When Rebecca Morgan spent her last $100 on a condemned hospital in the forgotten town of Meadowvale, she never imagined that the medical gold hidden beneath the operating room floor would uncover America's largest missing medical reserve, revitalize her struggling Rust Belt community into a cutting-edge healthcare innovation center, and ultimately give her family a second chance, while forever changing how we understand the intersection of medicine and economic opportunity. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The late afternoon rain pattered against cracked windows as Rebecca Morgan stared at the dilapidated hospital, wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. At 36, the former emergency room nurse felt the weight of desperation pressing down on her shoulders. The envelope in her hand contained exactly $100, every penny she had left in the world. "This is really it, Mom." 10-year-old Emma's voice drifted from their weathered Subaru Outback, where she sat surrounded by the few possessions they'd managed to keep after the bankruptcy. Her small face peered through the window, eyes wide with uncertainty. Rebecca forced a smile. "It just needs some TLC, sweetie. We'll make it beautiful." The hospital, a 1940s brick structure with more broken windows than intact ones, sat ominously at the edge of Meadowvale's downtown district. Nestled in the industrial heartland of Ohio, Meadowvale had once been a thriving manufacturing town. Now it was dying a slow death as the factories closed one by one, leaving only those too poor or too stubborn to leave. Rebecca had been neither poor nor stubborn 6 months ago. She'd been a respected nurse at the regional medical center, known for her calm demeanor during even the most chaotic trauma cases. But life had a way of unraveling without warning. First came the hospital budget cuts that eliminated her department. Then the medical bills, Emma's mysterious neurological condition, requiring specialists and treatments the insurance wouldn't cover. Finally, the bankruptcy filing after falling 5 months behind on mortgage payments. $100 cash like we agreed, Rebecca said, handing the money to Frank Donovan, the city's reluctant property manager. Frank was a weathered man in his 50s, his face mapped with the harsh lines of someone who'd seen too much hardship to be surprised by more. Frank counted the bills slowly, his expression unreadable. "Well, it's yours now. Don't expect much. The hospital closed down about 5 years back. County couldn't afford to maintain it anymore, and no private buyers were interested. Been sitting empty ever since." "What happened to all the equipment?" Rebecca asked, her medical curiosity momentarily overriding her anxiety. Frank shifted uncomfortably. "Most of it was auctioned off. But Dr. Harrington, he was the chief of surgery, started acting strange a few months before the closure. Said he was hearing noises from beneath the operating room floor at night. Said the building was trying to tell him something." Frank shook his head. "Found him one morning loading his car at dawn, wild-eyed, saying he couldn't stay another day. Never saw him again." He handed her a set of keys attached to a faded hospital ID badge. "Electricity still connected, but it'll be minimal emergency circuits only. Water too, but the pressure's not great. Roof leaks in the east wing." "Thank you," Rebecca said, though her gratitude was far from what she felt. This was rock bottom, the last stop before homelessness. She'd applied for over 70 jobs, but Meadowvale's economy was as broken as her new building. As Frank's truck disappeared down the cracked asphalt road, Rebecca stood alone in the fading light. The hospital sat on what had once been the town's most prestigious street, now lined with empty storefronts and boarded-up businesses. According to the pamphlet she'd found in the local library, this hospital had once been the pride of Meadowvale. Built during the industrial boom of the 1940s, when the town's steel mills and factories employed thousands. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Mom," Emma called again. "Can I come see?" Not yet, honey. Let me check it out first. Rebecca approached the building cautiously. The concrete steps were cracked, weeds pushing through like persistent fingers. The main entrance doors were chained shut, but Frank had indicated a side entrance that still functioned. The door stuck at first, then surrendered with a protesting groan that echoed through empty corridors. The smell hit her first musty and antiseptic, with undertones of mildew and something metallic like old copper pipes. Her phone's flashlight revealed a space frozen in time. Dust-covered reception desks sat where the staff had left them. Abandoned wheelchairs lined one wall. Faded health posters curled at the edges, their cheerful messages now eerily inappropriate in the decaying space. Rebecca moved carefully, testing the floor with each step. In places it felt dangerously soft water damage, probably from the leaking roof Frank had mentioned. The emergency power provided just enough illumination through scattered safety lights to navigate without tripping. She passed what had been the emergency room, a space she knew well from her own career. The trauma bays were empty now, stripped of equipment, but she could still envision the controlled chaos that once filled these rooms. But it was the papers scattered across the nurses' station that caught her attention. Old charts and notebooks filled with cramped handwriting. She picked one up, brushing away dust. March 10th. Sounds again tonight. Not settling. Not pipes. Rhythmic, like tapping from below. Called maintenance. They think I'm imagining things. March 15th. Found strange markings on floor in OR3. Peculiar patterns, almost geometric in nature. Took photos. March 21st. Spring equinox. Loudest tonight. Couldn't sleep during on-call shift. Floor vibrating. Something beneath wants to be found. Rebecca set the notebook down, a chill running through her despite the stuffy air. Just the ramblings of an overworked doctor, she told herself, probably suffered from stress-induced paranoia or delusions. She continued her inspection. The administrative wing was in surprisingly good shape. Some offices still had functioning desks and chairs. The cafeteria space was vast and empty, but the industrial kitchen might be salvageable. The patient rooms on the first floor were stripped bare, but the built-in cabinets remained intact. They could make this work, at least until she found a job. The building was enormous, far more space than they needed, but certain sections could be closed off to conserve heat and electricity. Perhaps she could even rent out some of the better-preserved areas once they were cleaned up. In the main corridor, she noticed a set of double doors marked Surgical Suite. Something about the chief surgeon's notes drew her toward this area. Unlike the rest of the hospital, these doors were secured with a padlock that didn't match the vintage of the building, newer, heavier. Curious, she tried the keys Frank had given her, surprised when one fit perfectly. The surgical wing was darker than the rest of the hospital. Her flashlight beam caught dust particles dancing in the air as she pushed through the doors. The main surgical board still hung on the wall, the last scheduled operations frozen in time like a medical Pompeii. 5 years ago, on the hospital's final day, Dr. James Harrington was scheduled for 3 procedures: an appendectomy, a gallbladder removal, and a complex orthopedic surgery. Rebecca found OR3 at the end of the hall. Unlike the other operating rooms she'd passed, this one was locked with a separate key. The door swung open with surprising ease, as if recently oiled. Inside, the operating table remained, though the overhead surgical lights had been removed. The room was smaller than modern ORS, intimate almost, a relic from when surgery was performed by smaller teams with less equipment. Her flashlight beam swept the floor, revealing the standard hospital tiles, except for one section near the center of the room. There, the tiles appeared different, slightly mismatched in color and more recently installed. A perfect square, approximately 6 feet on each side, directly beneath where a patient would lie during surgery. "Mom," Emma called from outside the building. "Is it okay in there?" Rebecca jumped, momentarily startled from her exploration. "Coming, sweetie." She let the OR door close behind her. Time enough to explore later. Her priority now was getting Emma settled. Outside, she helped her daughter from the car. Emma moved slowly, her body still recovering from her latest neurological episode 1 week ago. At 10, she carried herself with the caution of someone much older, always conscious of her body's unpredictability. "It doesn't look so bad," Emma said as they approached the building together, her gaze taking in the imposing brick facade with ivy creeping up one side. "It looks like something from a movie." Rebecca felt her throat tighten. Her daughter's optimism in the face of everything they'd lost was both a blessing and a heartbreak. "That's exactly what it is, baby. Our own movie set. And we're the stars." They spent the next 3 hours bringing in their meager possessions, clothes, books, Emma's treasured collection of vintage medical illustrations, a gift from Rebecca's former colleagues. The stethoscope Rebecca had received as a graduation present from nursing school 15 years ago. They chose the hospital's former administrative offices as their living space, 2 connecting rooms with intact windows and the least amount of visible damage. By the time they finished, night had fallen completely, revealing an unexpected silence that felt almost oppressive after years of living in a busy suburban neighborhood. Meadowvale after dark was a town holding its breath, waiting for a revival that never seemed to come. "Mom, I'm hungry," Emma said, sitting on the sleeping bag they'd laid out in what had once been the hospital administrator's office. The mahogany desk had remained too heavy to remove during the hospital's closing, and now served as their dining table. Rebecca opened their cooler and removed bread and peanut butter. "It's just sandwiches tonight, sweetie. Tomorrow I'll see about getting that mini fridge working so we can have more options." "It's okay. It's like camping," Emma said, accepting the sandwich. Her small face looked pale in the beam of their battery-powered lantern, but her eyes held that same undefeated curiosity that had gotten them through the worst of times. "Why did they close this place, Mom?" Rebecca considered how to answer as she made her own sandwich. "The town ran out of money. Not enough patients to keep it running, and the bigger hospital in Clayton took most of the serious cases anyway." "That's sad. Places shouldn't just be abandoned." "No, they shouldn't." Rebecca agreed, thinking of all the lives that had been saved within these walls, all the children born, all the healing that had taken place. It seemed wrong somehow that a building dedicated to medicine and care should be left to decay. After dinner, Rebecca helped Emma prepare for bed in what had been the adjacent office. She'd made up Emma's sleeping bag with her favorite medical-themed blanket, a small attempt at normalcy in their new circumstances. "Mom," Emma said as Rebecca tucked her in. "Do you hear that?" Rebecca paused, listening. At first, there was nothing but the occasional creak of the old building settling. Then a faint tapping sound, rhythmic and deliberate, like metal on metal. "It's just the pipes," Rebecca said automatically, though something about the regularity of the sound made her doubt her own explanation. "Old buildings make all kinds of noises." "It sounds like Morse code," Emma said sleepily. She had been fascinated by codes and ciphers since her illness began, finding comfort in systems and patterns when her body seemed to follow none. "Like someone sending a message." "I'm sure it's nothing," Rebecca said, though the notebook she'd found earlier flashed in her mind. "Try to sleep, sweetie. We have a big day tomorrow. We need to clean this place up and make it more livable." "Good night, Mom," Emma murmured, already drifting off, exhausted from the day's events. Rebecca kissed her forehead and retreated to the corridor, following the sound. It grew louder as she approached the surgical wing. The tapping had a pattern, 3 quick taps, followed by 3 slower ones, then 3 quick again. The universal distress signal, SOS. The sound led her back to OR3, inside. The room was dark except for a faint pulsing glow coming from beneath the mismatched floor tiles. The tapping seemed to emanate directly from that spot, as if something underneath was trying to communicate. Rebecca hesitated, her heart pounding. The rational part of her mind, the trained medical professional, said to ignore it, to go back to Emma and get some sleep. Old buildings settled. Pipes knocked. Electrical systems malfunctioned. There were dozens of logical explanations. But another part of her, perhaps, the same intuition that had made her an exceptional emergency nurse, knew this was something different. The precision of the tapping, the glow beneath the tiles, the strange notes left by Dr. Harrington, they all pointed to something beyond normal building quirks. She knelt beside the mismatched section of flooring, running her fingers along the edge. The tiles felt warmer than they should, almost vibrating beneath her touch. When she pressed her ear to the floor, the tapping became clearer, unmistakably rhythmic and intentional. There was a slight gap between one tile and the next, just wide enough to insert her fingernails. With a deep breath, Rebecca dug her fingers into the gap and pulled upward. The tile resisted at first, then came loose with a soft pop, revealing not the concrete subflooring she expected, but a metallic surface beneath. Rebecca's hands trembled as she removed more tiles, creating an opening approximately 2 feet square. Beneath the hospital flooring lay a metal hatch with a simple wheel lock similar to those on ships or submarines. The surface gleamed in the beam of her flashlight, not with the dull patina of old metal, but with a distinct golden hue that caught the light and reflected it back with unmistakable brilliance. The tapping had stopped the moment she'd removed the first tile, as if whatever lay beneath was waiting. The metal surface was inscribed with what appeared to be a caduceus, the medical symbol of 2 snakes winding around a staff, but rendered in an unusual style, with intricate patterns surrounding it that reminded her of circuitry diagrams. Rebecca traced the symbol with her finger, feeling the cool metal beneath her skin. As she did, the faint glow intensified, pulsing in rhythm with her touch. This was no ordinary metal, it had a weight and luster that reminded her of something she'd once seen in the hospital's radiology department, gold shielding used for certain specialized equipment. But this was far more extensive than any medical gold she'd encountered in her career. The entire hatch, at least 3 feet in diameter, appeared to be made of the precious metal, or at least heavily plated with it. At current market rates, even this single piece would be worth tens of thousands of dollars. The implication struck her with sudden clarity. If the entire floor beneath the operating room was similarly constructed, she was literally standing on a fortune, perhaps millions of dollars in medical-grade gold, hidden beneath an abandoned hospital that she now owned. Rebecca sat back on her heels, mind racing. Why would someone hide such valuable material here? Who had created this hidden compartment beneath the operating room floor? And what lay beyond the hatch itself? The questions tumbled through her mind as she grasped the wheel lock and attempted to turn it. It resisted at first, stiff from disuse, then gave way with a groaning sound that echoed in the empty operating room. As the lock disengaged, a soft hiss of escaping air suggested an airtight seal had been broken. With a deep breath, Rebecca pulled the hatch upward. It was heavier than she expected, confirming her suspicion about its composition. As it swung open on silent hinges, cool air wafted upward from the darkness below, carrying with it a sterile scent reminiscent of a medical clean room. Her flashlight beam revealed a metal ladder descending approximately 15 feet to a polished floor below. The walls of the shaft gleamed with the same golden material as the hatch, interspersed with what appeared to be complex electronic components. Rebecca hesitated at the edge of the opening. Every instinct told her to close the hatch, replace the tiles, and pretend she'd never found it. To take Emma and leave this place with its strange secrets and uncertain dangers. But the practical reality of their situation was inescapable. They had nowhere else to go, no resources, no options. If there was value hidden beneath this hospital, it could mean a fresh start for both of them. with a final glance toward the door, ensuring Emma was still safely asleep in the administrative wing. Rebecca swung her legs into the opening and began her descent into the unknown depths beneath Meadowvale Hospital. The ladder felt solid beneath her feet, each rung perfectly spaced for ease of use. As she descended, soft lighting activated automatically, illuminating her path with a warm amber glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. 15 feet below, her feet touched solid ground, a floor made of the same golden material but inlaid with a complex pattern of darker metals, forming what appeared to be a massive circuit board beneath her feet. The chamber was circular, perhaps 30 feet in diameter, with a domed ceiling that reflected the soft lighting. Around the perimeter stood 12 glass cylinders, each approximately 7 feet tall and 3 feet in diameter, arranged like the hours on a clock face. The cylinders were filled with a clear fluid and illuminated from within, giving them an ethereal quality that drew the eye. But it was the central platform that commanded attention. A raised dais of the same golden material, supporting what appeared to be an operating table, though unlike any Rebecca had ever seen. This table featured no straps or attachments for surgical implements. Instead, its surface was a complex mosaic of the same circuitry-like patterns, culminating in a perfect circle at its center. The chamber was unlike anything Rebecca had ever encountered in her medical career. Each glass cylinder contained what appeared to be medical equipment, but not the standard hospital fare. These were innovations, prototypes, technology she'd only read about in cutting-edge medical journals or heard discussed at conferences as theoretical possibilities. One cylinder contained what she recognized as a miniaturized dialysis system, perhaps a tenth the size of current models. Another held what appeared to be an artificial heart, but constructed of materials she couldn't identify, more flexible than mechanical hearts, more organic in appearance. Rebecca moved slowly around the perimeter, examining each cylinder with growing astonishment. Neural implants for treating conditions like Emma's, regenerative tissue matrices, drug delivery systems capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier. Each represented a breakthrough that could transform modern medicine, and each appeared to be constructed using the same golden material that lined the chamber. A soft blue glow drew her attention to a console positioned against one wall of the chamber. As she approached, a screen illuminated automatically, displaying a simple interface with a pulsing indicator. Rebecca hesitated, then placed her palm on the screen. The surface felt warm beneath her hand, almost alive. Biosignature recognized. Medical personnel. Access granted. The voice that emanated from the console was neither male nor female, with a slight synthetic quality that identified it as artificial. Welcome to Medical Gold Reserve Facility Alpha. Current inventory: 12 prototype medical devices, 7 specialized pharmaceutical formulations, and approximately 4,600 kilograms of medical-grade gold alloy. Rebecca's mind struggled to process the information. 4,600 kilograms, over 10,000 pounds of gold alloy. At current market rates, the material alone would be worth well over $200 million, not counting the value of the prototypes themselves, which could be incalculable given their advanced nature. "What is this place?" Rebecca whispered, though she didn't expect the system to respond to such an open-ended question. To her surprise, the console illuminated with historical footage, grainy videos from what appeared to be the 1960s, showing the hospital during its construction. The footage focused on a group of men in suits examining blueprints, then shifted to what appeared to be classified government documents with most text redacted. Medical Gold Reserve Facility Alpha, established 1963 under Operation Health Shield. Purpose: secure storage of strategic medical gold reserves and development of advanced medical technologies for national emergency deployment. The screen displayed more historical footage: the Cold War, civil defense drills, fallout shelters. In the event of nuclear conflict or pandemic-level biological warfare, standard medical infrastructure would be compromised. Operation Health Shield created distributed reserves of medical-grade gold and advanced prototype medical technologies to ensure continuity of critical healthcare capabilities. Rebecca stared at the screen, pieces falling into place. The government had created a hidden reserve of medical gold essential for certain types of equipment that required gold's unique properties of conductivity and resistance to corrosion right beneath an ordinary community hospital. And they'd use that gold to develop prototype medical technologies far ahead of their time. But something had gone wrong. The program had been abandoned, the hospital closed, the reserve forgotten or deliberately hidden, or had it. The chief surgeon's notes suggested someone had known, or at least suspected, that something unusual lay beneath the operating room floor. System status? Rebecca asked, wondering if the AI would respond to basic queries. System operational at 87% capacity. Reserve integrity maintained. Awaiting deployment authorization. Last system check, 1,978 days ago. Almost exactly 5 years, around the time the hospital had closed. Someone had accessed this chamber just before the hospital shut down. Dr. Harrington? Or someone else? Authorized personnel? She asked. The screen displayed a list of names most unfamiliar, but one jumped out immediately. Harrington, James EMD, Chief of Surgery, clearance level beta. So the doctor had known. But why had he fled rather than accessing the wealth of medical technology that could have saved the hospital? What had frightened him enough to abandon his career and this extraordinary discovery? The answer came as the screen cycled to a new display, a map of the United States with dozens of blinking lights, each labeled with MGRF, followed by a Greek letter. Medical gold reserve facilities spread across the country. Most lights glowed green, but several, including the one representing this facility, blinked red. Warning: reserve network compromise detected. Possible unauthorized access at multiple facilities. System lockdown protocol activated at affected sites. Something had triggered security protocols across the network of reserve facilities. The system had detected potential threats and sealed itself, probably activating the tapping signal as a way to alert authorized personnel, without broadcasting its presence more widely. Rebecca's mind raced with implications. She wasn't just standing in an abandoned medical facility. She was standing in what appeared to be part of a classified government program designed to preserve medical capabilities during national emergencies. A program that believed it was under threat. A soft chime from the console interrupted her thoughts. Proximity alert. Unrecognized personnel approaching hospital perimeter. Rebecca's heart jumped to her throat. Emma was still asleep in the administrative wing, vulnerable and alone. She rushed to the ladder, climbing quickly back to the operating room. As she emerged, she heard voices unfamiliar, male, multiple, coming from the direction of the hospital's main entrance. Moving silently through the darkened corridors, Rebecca reached the administrative wing just as flashlight beams appeared at the far end of the hallway. She slipped into the office where Emma slept, gently shaking her daughter awake. "Emma, sweetie, we need to be very quiet," she whispered, gathering their most essential belongings. "There are some people in the building. We need to hide until they leave." Emma blinked sleepily, but didn't question the urgency in her mother's voice. She'd learned early in her illness to respond quickly to emergency situations. Rebecca led her daughter through a connecting door into an adjacent office, then through a small bathroom to a supply closet at the very back of the administrative suite. The small space was dusty, but offered good concealment among shelves of forgotten office supplies. "Stay absolutely silent," Rebecca whispered, positioning herself protectively in front of Emma. Through a crack in the closet door, she could see a portion of the hallway, illuminated now by the intruders' flashlights. 3 men in dark clothing moved methodically through the administrative wing, examining each room with professional efficiency. There were no visible insignia or identification, but their movements suggested military or security training. One carried what appeared to be a handheld scanner, sweeping it across walls and floors as they progressed. "No readings in this section," one man reported, his voice low but carrying in the empty building. "Consistent with previous facilities. If it's here, it's deeper. The plans indicate main access through the surgical suite," another replied. "Let's move." Rebecca held her breath as the men proceeded down the hallway, away from their hiding place and toward the surgical wing. When their footsteps faded, she released a shaky sigh of relief. "Mom, who are those men?" Emma whispered, her small hand clutching Rebecca's arm. "I don't know, sweetie," Rebecca answered truthfully. "But I think they're looking for something in the hospital." "The thing making the tapping sound?" Rebecca glanced sharply at her daughter. "You heard it too, when?" "Last night, while you were exploring. It woke me up." Emma's eyes, wise beyond her years, studied her mother's face. "It's Morse code for SOS. We learned it in science camp last summer." Rebecca hesitated, then made a decision. Emma deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as Rebecca understood herself. "I found something, Emma, something valuable hidden under the hospital. I think those men might be looking for it too." Emma's eyes widened. "Like treasure?" "Something like that. Medical equipment and special metal that hospitals need." Rebecca strained to hear any sounds from the surgical wing. "We need to be careful. I don't know who those men are or what they want." "Are we in danger?" Emma asked, her voice small but remarkably steady. "I don't think so," Rebecca lied, unwilling to frighten her daughter further. "They're probably just inspecting the building. But we should stay hidden until they leave." They remained in the closet for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. Eventually, Rebecca heard the men returning, their footsteps quick and purposeful. "Confirmed. Access point in OR3, just like the others. Already breached." The voice sounded tense, urgent. "Call it in. We've got another compromise." "How many does that make now?" 7, all in the Rust Belt region. Someone systematically accessing the reserves. "Orders? Secure the site. Full team deployment. We move everything tonight." The footsteps receded, and Rebecca heard the distant sound of the side entrance, opening and closing. She waited another 10 minutes to be certain, then cautiously emerged from the closet with Emma. "Are they gone?" Emma whispered, staying close to her mother's side. "For now," Rebecca answered, moving to the window. Outside, she could see the 3 men standing near an unmarked black SUV, talking on satellite phones. "But they're calling for backup. We don't have much time." Rebecca's mind raced, analyzing their options. They could flee, abandon the hospital and the discovery beneath it, find another desperate solution to their financial problems. But where would they go? What would they live on? And if the men were government agents reclaiming government property, running might make Rebecca and Emma look like thieves or security risks. Alternatively, they could stay and try to explain their presence when the full team arrived. Rebecca could truthfully say she'd purchased the property legally and discovered the hidden facility by accident. But something about the secretive nature of the operation made her doubt such an explanation would be welcomed. There was a third option, though it carried its own risks. Rebecca could attempt to communicate with the facility's AI system, learn more about what was happening, and possibly find a legitimate way to benefit from the discovery without appearing threatening to whatever agency operated the reserves. "Emma, I need to check something. Will you be okay waiting here for a few minutes? Stay away from the windows and keep very quiet." Emma nodded solemnly. "I'll read my book with the flashlight under the sleeping bag." That's what I do during power outages. Rebecca hugged her daughter tightly, then slipped back into the corridor. Moving silently through the darkened hospital, she made her way to the surgical wing, alert for any sign that the men had left surveillance behind. OR3 was as she'd left it, the floor tiles removed, the golden hatch open. She descended the ladder quickly, returning to the circular chamber below. "System," she called softly as she approached the console. "Can you tell me who those men were?" The screen illuminated, displaying security footage from exterior cameras Rebecca hadn't realized existed. Security Response Team. Affiliation: Defense Advanced Medical Projects Agency, DAMPA. Classified Division established 1962. Mission: Protection and deployment of strategic medical assets. So they're legitimate government agents, Rebecca mused aloud. They're here to secure this facility. Affirmative. Response triggered by unauthorized access alert. That would be me, Rebecca said ruefully. I didn't mean to trigger an alarm. I just bought this building and discovered the facility by accident. The eye was silent for a moment, as if processing this information. Property transfer records confirm ownership change to Morgan, Rebecca J., 36 hours ago. Biometric scan confirms medical credentials, Morgan, Rebecca J., RN, Emergency Medicine Specialist, Hamilton Regional Medical Center, 2011 to 2023. Rebecca blinked in surprise. The system had accessed public records and somehow scanned her biometrics when she touched the console earlier. However, the II continued, your access is not the first unauthorized entry. This facility was previously accessed 1,978 days ago by Harrington, James E. M.D., who possessed beta clearance but exceeded authorization parameters. What did Dr. Harrington do? Rebecca asked, intrigued by this confirmation of the surgeon's involvement. The screen displayed footage from 5 years earlier, the same chamber, but with Dr. Harrington standing before the console, frantically accessing data. Dr. Harrington discovered evidence of systematic theft from multiple medical gold reserve facilities. Approximately 22% of strategic reserves have been diverted over a 15-year period, replaced with counterfeit alloys containing minimal gold content. Rebecca stared at the screen in shock. Someone had been stealing from the reserves, replacing real, medical gold with fake substitutes that would fail during an actual emergency. No wonder Dr. Harrington had fled. He'd uncovered a massive government fraud and feared for his safety. Is that why these reserves were abandoned? Because they'd been compromised? Negative. Official records indicate budgetary reallocation. Reserve program officially decommissioned 2018 due to changing strategic priorities. However, analysis indicates this explanation conflicts with national security directives still in effect. Rebecca processed this information quickly. The program hadn't been legitimately shut down. Someone had manipulated the process to facilitate theft of the gold reserves, using budget cuts as cover. But the system remained partially functional, monitoring the facilities and eventually detecting the compromises. And now the original agency has discovered the theft and is recovering what remains, she concluded. That's who those men represent. Probability assessment, 78, 6% likely. Alternative hypothesis, the security team represents the same entity responsible for the original diversions, now eliminating evidence. That possibility sent a chill through Rebecca. If the men outside were there to cover up a crime rather than rectify it, she and Emma could be in even greater danger as witnesses. System, what options do I have? Legally, I own this property now, but I understand the reserve facility remains government property. Correct. Your legal ownership extends to the hospital structure, but not classified facilities beneath. However, current protocols for compromise scenarios include witness integration options to maintain security. Witness integration? Rebecca repeated cautiously. In cases where civilians discover classified facilities due to security failures, 3 options exist: detention, relocation with memory suppression, or conditional recruitment. None of those sounded appealing, but the third seemed least threatening. Tell me about conditional recruitment. Civilians with relevant skills may be offered limited operational roles to maintain facility security, while full response is organized. Medical professionals are particularly suitable for medical gold reserve oversight due to technical knowledge requirements. Rebecca considered this information carefully. If she could position herself as a potential asset rather than a security risk, it might protect both her and Emma while giving them time to figure out a more permanent solution. At minimum, it could prevent immediate detention when the full security team arrived. Can you communicate with the response team? Let them know I'm willing to cooperate. Affirmative. However, transmission would reveal your presence in the secure facility, which may be interpreted as hostile action. Rebecca bit her lip, weighing the risks. Outside, the 3 men still waited for reinforcements. Inside, she stood amid what might be the last intact medical gold reserve in the region. A priceless resource for emergency medicine and a target for whoever had been systematically stealing from similar facilities. If the men outside represented legitimate government interests, cooperation was her best option. If they were part of the theft operation, exposing herself would be dangerous. But remaining hidden and being discovered later would look even more suspicious. Is there a way to verify their legitimacy before I reveal myself? The console displayed personnel files for the 3 men outside, including service records and security clearances. The information appeared comprehensive and legitimate, though Rebecca had no way to independently verify it. Based on available data, security team authentication confidence, 94.3%. Rebecca made her decision. System, please inform the response team that Rebecca Morgan, registered nurse and current property owner, discovered the facility accidentally and wishes to cooperate fully. Transmitting. Please stand by. Outside, Rebecca saw one of the men suddenly straighten, pressing a hand to his earpiece. He spoke urgently to his colleagues, all 3 now looking intently at the hospital building. After a brief conference, one man approached the side entrance while the others maintained positions by the vehicle. Rebecca's heart pounded as she ascended the ladder back to OR 3. She moved quickly through the surgical wing to the main corridor, where she waited for the approaching agent. Better to meet him on neutral ground than be discovered in the secure facility. The beam of a tactical flashlight preceded the man as he entered the corridor. Rebecca raised her hand slowly to show she was unarmed. Ms. Morgan? The agent's voice was professional, neither friendly nor threatening. I'm Agent Calloway, Defense Advanced Medical Projects Agency. I understand you've access to secure government installation beneath this property. I did, Rebecca confirmed steadily. I purchased this building yesterday and discovered the facility accidentally. I'm willing to cooperate fully and understand the security implications. Agent Calloway studied her carefully, then spoke into his communications device. Primary subject located and cooperative. Proceed with Type C integration protocol. To Rebecca, he added, "Where is your daughter? Our records show you have a minor child named Emma Morgan." Rebecca tensed at the mention of her daughter. She's asleep in the administrative wing. She knows nothing about the facility. Please take me to her. Then we'll discuss next steps. Rebecca led the agent to the administrative offices, where Emma sat wide-eyed on her sleeping bag, clutching her book tightly. "It's okay, Emma," Rebecca reassured her. "This is Agent Calloway. He works for the government, and he's here about the hospital." Emma regarded the agent warily, but with the remarkable composure she'd developed through years of medical procedures. "Are we in trouble?" Agent Calloway's expression softened slightly. "No, young lady, you're not in trouble. But we have a situation that requires some careful handling." Your mother discovered something important, something that belongs to the government. We need to make sure it stays safe. The gold under the hospital? Emma asked innocently. Both Rebecca and the agent stared at her in surprise. I heard you talking to Mom, Emma explained with a shrug. The walls are thin. And I saw the gold when I followed you earlier. Rebecca closed her eyes briefly. Of course Emma had followed her daughter's curiosity had always outweighed her caution. Agent Calloway recovered quickly. Yes, the gold. It's very special gold used for medical equipment. And it's very important that the right people use it for the right purposes. Are you the right people? Emma asked directly, with a child's unerring instinct for the critical question. The agent met her gaze steadily. We're trying to be. Someone has been taking this special gold from places like this all over the country. We're trying to stop them and recover what's left. Rebecca watched this exchange with growing interest. The agent was being surprisingly forthcoming, either as a calculated effort to gain their trust, or because he genuinely believed transparency was their best approach. What happens now? Rebecca asked. Agent Calloway turned to her. That depends on several factors. Normally, civilians who discover classified installations are relocated while the security breach is contained. However, your medical background and current ownership of the property present. Unique opportunities. The system mentioned something about conditional recruitment, Rebecca prompted. Yes, given the systematic nature of the thefts we're investigating, we've been forced to adapt our security protocols. In some cases, maintaining a civilian presence as camouflage while we secure the remaining reserves has proven effective. You want us to stay here and pretend nothing happened, Rebecca translated. To act as cover while you figure out who's behind the thefts. Essentially, yes. With some modifications to ensure both your safety and the security of the reserve. Agent Calloway gestured toward the window, where his colleague still waited by the vehicle. We would establish a perimeter surveillance system, restricted access to the reserve itself, and a cover story explaining your sudden financial improvement. Financial improvement. Ms. Morgan, you've just discovered government property worth over $200 million. While the reserve itself remains federal property, there are substantial finder's fees and security consultation contracts available to incentivize cooperation. Rebecca stared at him, processing the implications. You're offering to pay us to stay here and help protect the reserve. With appropriate security clearances and training, yes. The alternative is immediate relocation and significant restrictions to ensure confidentiality. The choice is yours, but I should note that the conditional recruitment option would include comprehensive medical support. His gaze shifted meaningfully to Emma, and Rebecca understood immediately. Her daughter's medical condition, the very reason they'd ended up desperate, enough to buy an abandoned hospital, could receive world-class treatment through this arrangement. How do I know I can trust you? Rebecca asked, the critical question that had been at the core of her concerns from the beginning. A fair question. Agent Calloway removed a secure tablet from his jacket. This contains classified briefing materials on Operation Health Shield, its current status, and the ongoing investigation into the reserve thefts. It also includes verification codes you can use with the facility's AI system to confirm my authorization level. Review it while we establish preliminary security measures outside. He handed her the tablet, then spoke again into his communication device. Proceeding with perimeter setup. Subject reviewing verification materials. As the agent stepped outside to confer with his colleagues, Rebecca sat beside Emma on the sleeping bag, the tablet glowing between them. What do you think, sweetie? She asked softly. This is a big decision for both of us. Emma considered the question with the seriousness Rebecca had come to expect from her old soul daughter. I think it's like in my books, Mom. Sometimes the most valuable treasure isn't gold, it's knowledge. Rebecca smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. And what knowledge do you think we found here? That sometimes rock bottom has a trapdoor, Emma replied with unexpected wisdom. And sometimes what looks like an ending is really a beginning. 3 years later, Rebecca Morgan stood at the newly renovated entrance of Meadowvale Medical Innovation Center, watching as morning sunlight glinted off the modern glass facade that now wrapped around the historic brick hospital. The transformation wasn't just architectural, it reflected the remarkable journey that had unfolded since that desperate night when she'd spent her last $100 on a condemned building. "Morning, Director Morgan," called Dr. Eliza Chen, their head of research, as she swiped her security badge at the entrance. "The Taiwanese delegation arrives at 10. Their neuroscience minister is particularly interested in the neural implant program." "Thanks, Eliza. I'll be there." Rebecca smiled, still occasionally surprised when someone addressed her by her official title. From unemployed nurse to executive director of what had become one of the most cutting-edge medical research facilities in the country, the transition sometimes felt surreal. Rebecca entered the building, nodding to the security personnel, a mix of Dampa agents in civilian clothing and local hires who believed they were working for a well-funded private research foundation. The cover story had evolved over time, becoming increasingly legitimate as the facility transitioned from a classified reserve to a public-private partnership pioneering medical innovations. The main atrium, once a decaying hospital lobby, now featured a towering installation of interlocking golden spheres representing molecular structures. Visitors assumed it was merely artistic. Only those with proper clearance knew it contained actual medical gold from the reserve, symbolizing the facility's unusual origin story. Rebecca passed through a biometric scanner disguised as a standard security gate, entering the restricted section of the facility. Here, the true work continued, securing the remaining medical gold, developing the prototype technologies from the reserve, and investigating the systematic theft that had targeted similar facilities across the country. "Mom!" Emma's voice echoed down the corridor. At 13, her daughter moved with the energetic confidence of a healthy teenager, a far cry from the cautious, illness-constrained child of 3 years ago. "Dr. Harrington's back, and he brought the files from the Geneva archive." Rebecca's pulse quickened. James Harrington, the surgeon whose hasty departure had once seemed like paranoid delusion, had become their most valuable ally after Agent Calloway's team located him living under an assumed name in rural Canada. His testimony had been crucial in identifying the network behind the reserve thefts. She found them in the central conference room, Emma chatting animatedly with the silver-haired surgeon while Agent Calloway, now officially Security Director Calloway, reviewed documents spread across the table. "Dr. Harrington." Rebecca extended her hand warmly. "Successful trip, I hear." "Beyond expectations." Harrington's eyes, once haunted by fear, now shone with purpose. The World Health Organization archives confirmed its shipments of counterfeit medical equipment containing substandard gold alloys to 27 developing nations over the past decade, all traced back to shell companies connected to Neurotech Industries. Calloway looked up from the documents. "This corroborates what we found in the Frankfurt records." Neurotech's founder, Vincent Mercer, was a junior scientist with the original Health Shield program before he left to start his own medical technology company. He had insider knowledge of the reserves, Rebecca concluded. He knew exactly what was there and how to access it. "Worse than that," Harrington added grimly. "The international deployment records show Neurotech has been systematically replacing legitimate medical gold equipment in crisis regions with counterfeits that fail under stress. The death toll from equipment failures in disaster areas is estimated at over 2,000. Rebecca felt a familiar surge of righteous anger. What had begun as apparent financial theft had revealed itself as something far more sinister, a deliberate sabotage of emergency medical infrastructure that had cost countless lives. "Where does this leave the investigation?" she asked Calloway. "We're close. Treasury Department is preparing to move against Neurotech's financial assets. Justice has a sealed indictment ready for Mercer and his top executives. We just need to track the final missing shipment, 50 kilograms of medical gold that disappeared from the Cleveland Reserve last year." Emma, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "What about Dr. Parker's theory? About the metamaterials program?" Rebecca smiled at her daughter's insight. In the 3 years since their discovery, Emma had transitioned from patient to student to valuable contributor. The neural implant developed from reserve prototypes had not only cured her neurological condition, but enhanced her already formidable intellect. At 13, she was already taking college-level courses and participating in research discussions. Dr. Parker might be onto something, Harrington acknowledged. Vincent Mercer's recent publications hint at a breakthrough in metamaterial development that could revolutionize non-invasive imaging. The specifications would require precisely the amount of gold missing from Cleveland. "So he's planning one final innovation before he's exposed," Rebecca mused. "A last attempt at medical glory, even if built on theft and deception." "Typical narcissist," Calloway remarked. "Can't accept that his legitimate accomplishments might be overshadowed by his crimes." Their meeting was interrupted by Rebecca's secure phone vibrating with an urgent message. The Taiwanese delegation arrived early. They're in the main reception area now. "I need to greet them." She gathered her notes quickly. "Keep me updated on any developments." "Emma, remember you have your advanced biology seminar at noon." "Already set 3 alarms," Emma replied with a grin, holding up her specialized tablet, another adaptation of reserve technology. As Rebecca headed toward reception, she reflected on the extraordinary community that had formed around their discovery. What had started as a desperate last stand, a homeless nurse and her sick daughter claiming an abandoned hospital, had evolved into something none of them could have predicted. A legitimate medical research center built atop a classified facility, staffed by a unique blend of government agents, medical professionals, and civilian researchers, all united by a shared mission. The Taiwanese delegation was impressive: 6 distinguished scientists and officials led by Dr. Lin, their Minister of Neuroscience Innovation. After formal introductions, Rebecca guided them toward the demonstration areas, explaining the center's public mission. Meadowvale Medical Innovation Center specializes in adaptive medical technologies for underserved populations, she explained as they walked. "We focus particularly on deployable solutions for emergency medicine and disaster response. Your neural interface program has generated considerable attention," Dr. Lin commented. "The preliminary results in treating neurological disorders appear remarkable." "We've been fortunate," Rebecca acknowledged modestly, omitting that the neural interface had been developed from prototypes discovered in the reserve. "Our unique funding model allows us to pursue high-risk, high-reward research without the constraints of quarterly profit expectations." She led them through a series of laboratories where researchers demonstrated technologies that had been adapted from the reserve. Prototypes, miniaturized dialysis units that could run on minimal power, regenerative bandages that accelerated healing in trauma patients, portable diagnostic equipment that could detect internal bleeding without imaging technology. Each innovation shared a common element. They all utilized the unique properties of medical-grade gold alloys to achieve exceptional performance while remaining affordable for deployment in resource-limited settings. The gold itself came from the reserve, officially reallocated through classified channels that turned stolen government property into legitimately funded medical breakthroughs. As they approached the Neural Interface Laboratory, Rebecca received another urgent message, this one from Calloway. "Emergency in Sector 7. Containment breach possible. Invoke Protocol Amber." Rebecca maintained her professional smile while internally shifting to crisis mode. Protocol Amber: Meta-security situation requiring immediate but discreet response. Sector 7 was the secure area directly above the original reserve chamber. Dr. Lin, I apologize, but a minor facilities issue requires my attention, she said smoothly. Dr. Chung will continue your tour while I address it. I'll rejoin you shortly. She handed the delegation off to Eliza Chun, then moved quickly toward the secure elevator that would take her to Sector 7, her security clearance, long since upgraded from the conditional recruitment status to full operational authority, granted immediate access to all areas of the facility. The elevator descended to the lower level, where she found Calloway coordinating a response team outside the reinforced doors that protected the original reserve entrance. What happened? She asked without preamble. Unauthorized access attempt, he replied grimly. Someone tried to breach the main vault using legacy authentication codes from the original Health Shield program. Mercer? Almost certainly. The attempt originated from an external system, but routed through our own network, someone with intimate knowledge of the facility's architecture. Rebecca's mind raced. What did they access? That's the concerning part. They were specifically targeting the prototype database. Not the gold inventory, not the security systems. They wanted the technical specifications for the original 12 prototypes. Rebecca understood immediately. The prototypes themselves were valuable, but the technical specifications, the precise formulations, the manufacturing processes, the integration patterns of the gold alloys, those were priceless. With those specifications, someone could reverse engineer the entire reserve program. Could they have succeeded? Calloway hesitated. Partially. The system containment protocols engaged before complete extraction, but preliminary analysis suggests approximately 40% of the specifications may have been compromised. Enough to be dangerous in the wrong hands, Rebecca concluded, especially if combined with whatever Mercer already knows from his time with the program. We've initiated countermeasures, but there's another complication. Calloway lowered his voice. The breach activated a legacy protocol we weren't aware of, something from the original program architecture. What kind of protocol? It appears the original Health Shield designers built in a fail-safe. If the system detected a significant security compromise, it would initiate an autonomous replication sequence, essentially creating backup copies of critical data and prototype specifications, then distributing them to secure locations. Rebecca stared at him. You're saying the system is making copies of itself? In a manner of speaking, yes. It's transferring essential data to other reserve facilities that still have functioning storage capacity. It's a redundancy measure designed to preserve critical medical knowledge, even if individual facilities are compromised. But most of those facilities have been decommissioned or compromised themselves, Rebecca pointed out. Where exactly is our data being sent? Calloway indicated a display screen showing a map similar to the one Rebecca had seen during her first encounter with the reserve system, dots representing facilities across the country. Most dark or flashing red to indicate compromise status, but 3 dots glowed green, actively receiving data. These 3 reserves are still secure, at least according to the legacy system. The problem is, we have no current information about their actual status. They could be abandoned, compromised, or even destroyed for all we know. Rebecca studied the map, noting the locations, one in the mountains of Colorado, another in rural Mississippi, and a third in northern Michigan. So our secure data could be transmitting to completely unsecured locations. Exactly. And given Mercer's demonstrated ability to intercept these transmissions, we have to assume he's already tracking the data flow to identify the remaining reserves. A chill ran down Rebecca's spine as she grasped the full implications. He's not just after our facility, he's using our security breach to locate the last intact reserves. It's a classic intelligence technique: compromise one secure system to reveal others. Calloway's expression was grim. We need to warn those facilities immediately, but we have no direct communication channels. The legacy system is using autonomous protocols that bypass normal networks. Rebecca considered the problem, drawing on her 3 years of experience with the reserve systems. There might be another way. The original communication architecture included an emergency override function, a way for authorized personnel to broadcast warnings across the entire network, regardless of individual facility status. Can we access that function? Possibly. Rebecca moved to the main console, the same one she'd first encountered 3 years ago beneath the operating room floor. But it would require the highest authorization level. None of us have that clearance. Actually, came a voice from the doorway, one of us might. They turned to see Dr. Harrington and Emma entering the secure area. The original Health Shield protocol included a provision for medical emergency override, Harrington explained. Chief medical officers at each facility had special authorization that could supersede normal security protocols in case of urgent patient needs. You were chief of surgery, not chief medical officer, Calloway pointed out. True, but I inherited an emergency access token when the previous CMO retired. Harrington removed a small metal object from his pocket, what appeared to be an old-fashioned key with intricate notches and patterns. It's not just physical, it contains encrypted authorization codes that might still be recognized by the legacy system. Rebecca looked at the key skeptically. That technology is decades old. Would the current system even have the interface to read it? The reserve was designed for continuity across decades, Emma interjected. The interfaces would have to be backward compatible. She pointed to a small recess in the console that Rebecca had never noticed, a keyhole concealed behind a panel marked with the same caduceus symbol that adorned the main hatch. Harrington approached the console, inserted the key, and turned it carefully. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the system illuminated with new displays, emergency protocols that had remained dormant until activated by legitimate medical authority. Broadcast function accessible, announced the system's synthetic voice. Please specify emergency message and distribution parameters. Harrington looked to Calloway, who nodded authorization. Warning to all medical gold reserve facilities, Harrington stated clearly. Security compromise in progress. Unauthorized access detected. Suspect, Vincent Mercer, former Health Shield personnel. Implementation of Protocol Phoenix recommended. Authentication. Harrington James E. CMO Proxy, Facility Alpha. The system processed for several seconds. Message authenticated. Broadcasting to all functional receivers. Warning. Only 3 facilities currently capable of receiving emergency communications. Estimated delivery time, immediate. Rebecca watched as the 3 green dots on the map pulsed, acknowledging receipt of the warning. Will it be enough? Will they understand what they're facing? Each facility had contingency plans for compromise scenarios, Calloway explained. Protocol Phoenix specifically refers to immediate security lockdown and preparation for physical relocation of critical assets. So we've warned them, Rebecca said. But Mercer still has partial specifications and may have tracked the data transmission. We've bought time, but the reserves are still vulnerable. Then we need to be proactive, Emma suggested. Instead of just defending, we should take the initiative. All 3 adults turned to look at the 13-year-old, whose confident expression showed no hint of doubt. What do you suggest? Calloway asked with the respect he'd come to show for Emma's analytical abilities. Mercer wants the specifications to complete his metamaterial breakthrough. He's expecting us to focus on defending the reserves. What if we instead focused on completing the research ourselves, using our legitimate access to the specifications he couldn't steal? Rebecca considered her daughter's suggestion. You mean beat him at his own game? Develop the technology before he can. Exactly. Emma's eyes lit with enthusiasm. We have advantages. He doesn't direct access to the actual prototypes, the original research notes, and most importantly, a legitimate research facility with brilliant scientists who aren't hiding from international authorities. Harrington nodded slowly. It could work. The metamaterial applications have enormous potential for good non-invasive treatment of previously inoperable conditions, precision drug delivery to target sites, neural regeneration. And by developing it legitimately, Calloway added, we establish clear patent priority. Even if Mercer manages to complete his version, he wouldn't be able to profit from it. More importantly, Rebecca said, thinking of the broader implications, we'd ensure the technology is used ethically, deployed to help people rather than exploited for profit or power. The idea crystallized rapidly into a plan. They would divide their resources, maintaining the security warning to the other reserves, while simultaneously accelerating their own research into the metamaterial applications. The Taiwanese delegation, with their expertise in neuroscience, could become valuable collaborators rather than just visitors. We should brief Dr. Chen immediately, Rebecca decided. And I'll need to modify my presentation to the delegation. What about security? Calloway asked. We're still vulnerable to further intrusion attempts. Implement rotating authentication protocols, Emma suggested. And air-gap the most sensitive research systems. Mercer's approach relied on network connectivity. Remove that, and his remote access capabilities become irrelevant. As they rapidly developed the response plan, Rebecca was struck by the seamless way their unusual team functioned: government security, medical expertise, administrative leadership, and Emma's remarkable insight, all complementing each other perfectly. What had begun as a desperate purchase had evolved into something none of them could have anticipated, a mission that combined cutting-edge science with profound ethical purpose. Later that afternoon, Rebecca stood before the expanded research team, now including the Taiwanese delegation, who had eagerly agreed to collaborate when presented with the situation. The main laboratory had been quickly reconfigured for the accelerated research initiative, with specialized equipment brought in from multiple departments. What we're attempting has never been done before, Rebecca explained to the assembled scientists. We're not just developing new medical technology, we're racing to ensure that this innovation benefits humanity rather than becoming another tool for profit and exploitation. Dr. Lin nodded approvingly. In Taiwan, we have a saying, medicine is not merely science. It is the art of healing with compassion. This project embodies that philosophy. As the team dispersed to begin their work, Emma approached her mother. Do you think we'll succeed? Mercer has a head start and probably more resources. Rebecca put an arm around her daughter's shoulders. He has resources, but we have something more valuable: legitimate purpose. Throughout history, the most significant medical breakthroughs have come not from those seeking profit, but from those driven by genuine desire to heal and help. Like Alexander Fleming discovering penicillin by accident? Emma suggested. Exactly. Or like us finding this hospital by desperate chance. Rebecca gazed around at the bustling laboratory, a scene unimaginable 3 years ago when they'd arrived with nothing but a sleeping bag and the clothes on their backs. Sometimes the most powerful innovations arise, not from careful planning, but from recognizing the value in what others have overlooked. As if to emphasize her point, one of the researchers called out excitedly, pointing to a microscope display where the first experimental metamaterial sample was showing promising results, its molecular structure reconfiguring in response to specific neural impulses. The race to defeat Mercer and secure the remaining medical gold reserves had begun. But for Rebecca, watching her daughter move confidently among world-renowned scientists, the true victory was already evident. From the depths of financial ruin, they had discovered not just material treasure, but something far more valuable: purpose, community, and the opportunity to transform desperation into hope for countless others. The medical gold beneath the hospital floor had proven valuable beyond measure. But the true gold had been the human potential it unlocked in Rebecca, in Emma, and in the remarkable coalition of individuals who had come together to ensure that healing, not profit, would be the legacy of their extraordinary discovery. 5 years later, Rebecca Morgan stood at the podium in Stockholm's concert hall, the Nobel Prize medal for medicine gleaming against her simple black dress. Behind her sat the expanded team from what was now globally known as the Meadowvale Institute: Dr. Chun, Dr. Lin, Agent Calloway, who had long since transitioned to his public role as security director, Dr. Harrington, and most importantly, 18-year-old Emma Morgan, recently accepted to Harvard Medical School's MD-PhD program. "When I spent my last $100 on a condemned hospital," Rebecca began, her voice steady despite the emotion of the moment, "I wasn't seeking a medical breakthrough. I was simply trying to provide shelter for my daughter." The audience of distinguished scientists, dignitaries, and medical professionals listened intently as she continued. "Our discovery of the medical gold reserve beneath that hospital floor could have remained secret, exploited for personal gain, or ignored out of fear. Instead, it became the foundation for a revolution in accessible medical technology that has already saved over 1 million lives worldwide." Rebecca glanced at the Nobel Committee members seated in the front row. The citation for their prize had been carefully worded to omit classified details while acknowledging the extraordinary achievement for the development of adaptive neural metamaterials and their application in treating previously incurable neurological disorders in resource-limited settings. As she spoke, screens throughout the hall displayed images of the Meadowvale metamaterial neural interface being used in field hospitals across Africa, disaster zones in Southeast Asia, and remote clinics in South America. The technology derived from those original prototypes, but evolved through legitimate research, had fulfilled its promise: non-invasive treatment for conditions previously considered untreatable, delivered via portable devices that required minimal training to operate. Today, a child in rural Kenya has the same access to neural therapy as a patient in the most advanced hospital in Stockholm or New York, Rebecca said, her voice carrying the quiet pride of someone who had witnessed this transformation firsthand. This was always the true potential of the medical gold reserves, not as hoarded wealth, but as the foundation for healing technologies that could reach everyone, everywhere. What Rebecca didn't mention was the classified epilogue to the Mercer case. 3 years earlier, after a global manhunt, authorities had finally captured the disgraced medical entrepreneur in a remote compound in Myanmar. His illegal metamaterial research had failed spectacularly, not because the science was unsound, but because the counterfeit gold alloys he'd stolen couldn't sustain the molecular configurations necessary for stable neural interfaces. His capture had led to the recovery of nearly 80% of the stolen medical gold, which had been quietly reintegrated into legitimate research channels through the Meadowvale Institute. The remaining 3 intact reserves had been officially declassified and repurposed as specialized research facilities, each focusing on different applications of the revolutionary technology: emergency medicine, chronic disease management, and pediatric neurological disorders. As Rebecca concluded her acceptance speech, she departed from the prepared text to address the assembled young scientists directly. The most valuable discovery at Meadowvale wasn't the gold itself, but the reminder that true healing combines scientific precision with human compassion. Technology without purpose is merely clever. Purpose without technology is merely wishful. Together, they transform what seems impossible into tomorrow's standard of care. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes, an extraordinary response even by Nobel standards. As Rebecca rejoined her team in the audience, Emma squeezed her hand tightly, both women thinking of that rain-soaked evening 8 years ago, when they'd stood before a condemned building with nothing but desperation and determination. Later that evening, at the formal Nobel banquet, Rebecca found herself seated beside Dr. Carolina Svensson, the legendary Swedish neurosurgeon who had initially been their most skeptical critic. "I must confess," Dr. Svensson said as they awaited the first course, "when I first heard about metamaterial neural interfaces being developed in an abandoned American hospital, I was certain it was either fraud or fantasy." Rebecca smiled. "A reasonable assumption. I sometimes still wake up wondering if I've dreamed the whole thing." "What convinced me was the Mongolia case study," Svensson continued. 53 children with treatment-resistant epilepsy, all successfully managed with a device that could be operated by local physicians with minimal specialized training. It defied everything I thought I knew about neurological intervention. "That deployment was Emma's design," Rebecca said proudly, glancing toward her daughter, who was deep in conversation with a quantum physicist across the table. She insisted that true innovation wasn't just about creating new technology but ensuring it could be implemented in the most challenging environments. "She has an extraordinary perspective," Svensson observed. "Few researchers her age understand the gap between theoretical possibility and practical implementation." "Emma's understanding comes from experience," Rebecca replied. "She was once the patient for whom conventional treatments failed. Now she designs systems to ensure no one faces those limitations again." As the elaborate dinner progressed through its traditional courses, Rebecca found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The Nobel Prize represented international recognition, but it was merely the most visible outcome of their work. The real achievements lay elsewhere, in the worldwide network of Meadowvale-trained medical practitioners, in the open-source platform that allowed continuous improvement of their base technologies, in the international treaty that had established medical metamaterials as a protected resource, immune from weaponization or excessive commercialization. Most importantly, the Meadowvale discovery had sparked a fundamental shift in how the medical community approached innovation away from proprietary technologies accessible only to wealthy nations and toward collaborative development of solutions designed for universal deployment. After the banquet, the Meadowvale team gathered in Rebecca's suite at the Grand Hotel, the formal attire of the ceremony replaced by comfortable clothes, as they shared champagne and reflected on their journey. "To think it all started with a desperate purchase," Dr. Harrington mused, gazing out at Stockholm's twinkling lights. "If you hadn't bought that hospital, Rebecca, someone else would have found the reserve eventually," she replied modestly. "Perhaps," Calloway interjected, "but they might not have made the same choices you did." The gold alone was worth over $200 million. Many people would have focused on extracting personal wealth rather than preserving the technology. Dr. Chun raised her glass. "To choices made from integrity rather than expediency. They rarely seem advantageous in the moment, but they're the only ones that create lasting value." As their small celebration continued, Emma slipped away to the balcony, where Rebecca found her daughter staring thoughtfully at the Medal of Merit. She'd been awarded separately by the King of Sweden earlier that day recognition for her pivotal role in developing the pediatric applications of their technology. "Having second thoughts about Harvard?" Rebecca asked gently, joining her in the cool evening air. Emma shook her head. "Just thinking about all the other abandoned buildings out there, all the other desperate people who might be standing on top of solutions they can't yet see." "You're not responsible for finding all of them," Rebecca reminded her. "No, but I am responsible for creating systems that make discovery more likely." Emma turned to her mother, her eyes bright with the same determination that had sustained them through their darkest days. "That's what I want to focus on at Harvard, not just advancing the technology, but redesigning the frameworks that determine who benefits from innovation." Rebecca felt a surge of pride mixed with awe at her daughter's vision. "That sounds more ambitious than a Nobel Prize." "The prize celebrates what we've already done," Emma replied. I'm more interested in what hasn't been discovered yet, all the solutions hidden beneath the surface of what we think we know. The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from Rebecca's secure phone, a special tone reserved for high-priority communications from the Meadowvale facility. She read the message quickly, then looked up with an expression of amazement. The Michigan Reserve Team just successfully tested the cardiac metamaterial application. Complete regeneration of damaged heart tissue in the porcine model. Zero rejection. Full functional recovery. The news electrified the room. This application, the ability to regenerate heart muscle damaged by heart attacks, had been their most challenging goal, repeatedly hampered by stability issues in the metamaterial structure. How did they solve the alignment problem? Dr. Lin asked immediately. They didn't, Rebecca replied, scanning the detailed report. They took an entirely different approach based on Emma's theoretical model from last year, using the native electrical patterns of the heart itself to guide the metamaterial configuration. All eyes turned to Emma, who looked genuinely surprised. That was just a thought experiment. I never expected them to implement it so quickly. Sometimes the most powerful ideas are those we consider merely theoretical, Dr. Harrington observed. Just as the most valuable buildings might be those others consider worthless. The next morning, as the Meadowvale team prepared to return to the United States, they received an unexpected visitor, Secretary General Torres of the United Nations, who had attended the Nobel ceremony and requested a private meeting. The Security Council has been following your work with great interest, Torres explained once they were seated in Rebecca's suite. Particularly the applications for post-conflict reconstruction and disaster response. Rebecca exchanged glances with Calloway, both aware that this wasn't a casual visit. We've prioritized those applications, precisely because they reach populations with limited access to conventional medical infrastructure. Indeed, Torres nodded. And that approach has demonstrated remarkable effectiveness, which is why I've come with a proposal. The Secretary General outlined a bold initiative, the establishment of a UN-sponsored network of regional innovation centers based on the Meadowvale model, each focusing on adapting metamaterial medical technologies to specific regional challenges and building local capacity for implementation. We envision 12 centers initially, Torres explained, strategically located to serve populations with the greatest need and the least access to advanced care. Each would combine research capabilities with training programs for local medical personnel. An ambitious proposal, Rebecca commented. What resources would the UN provide? Full diplomatic status for each facility, exemption from intellectual property restrictions that might impede humanitarian applications, and an initial funding commitment of $2 billion over 5 years. Torres paused. But more importantly, we offer legitimacy, formal recognition that this technology belongs not to any single nation or organization, but to humanity as a whole. The proposal aligned perfectly with the vision that had guided their work from the beginning, ensuring that the medical gold's potential benefited those most in need, not just those with the greatest resources. Yet it also represented a significant expansion beyond what they had imagined possible. We would need to maintain certain security protocols, Calloway noted, mindful of the classified aspects of their work that still required protection. Naturally, Torres agreed. The UN Security Council is prepared to establish appropriate oversight while respecting necessary confidentiality. As the discussion continued, Emma, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. What happens to the original Meadowvale facility in this scenario? Torres smiled. It would become the coordinating center for the entire network, both the operational headquarters and the primary training facility for program directors. In essence, your abandoned hospital would become the template for a global transformation in medical access. The symmetry was striking, from a desperate last resort to a global model, from isolation to interconnection, from scarcity to abundance. The condemned building that had once represented rock bottom would now define the highest aspirations of medical innovation. Later that day, as their plane crossed the Atlantic returning home, Rebecca sat beside Emma, both women lost in thought as they processed the extraordinary developments of the past 48 hours. "Do you ever regret it?" Emma asked suddenly. "Taking that risk on the hospital? All the dangers we faced because of what we found?" Rebecca considered the question carefully. There were moments of fear, certainly. But regret? No. Even before we discovered what lay beneath the operating room floor, that building represented something essential: the refusal to surrender to circumstances, the determination to create value where others saw only liability. The hospital itself was the first metamaterial, Emma suggested thoughtfully. Something transformed from one purpose to another through the right application of energy and intention. Rebecca smiled at her daughter's insight. Exactly. The building was condemned, but we weren't. That's the principle that guided everything that followed, the belief that apparent endings can become remarkable beginnings when approached with courage and compassion. As their plane began its descent toward home, Rebecca could see the transformed Meadowvale facility in the distance, no longer a decaying relic, but a thriving complex of research buildings, training centers, and manufacturing facilities that produced life-saving technologies for distribution worldwide. The original hospital structure remained at its core, preserved and integrated into the modern campus as both functional space and symbolic reminder of their journey. From her window, Rebecca could just make out the newest addition, a public museum chronicling the history of medical innovation, built where the original trailer park had stood. The museum culminated in an interactive exhibition demonstrating how metamaterial technologies were transforming healthcare worldwide, inviting visitors to imagine future applications not yet conceived. What had begun with her last $100 had catalyzed a cascade of transformation that extended far beyond their small Rust Belt town. The medical gold hidden beneath the hospital floor had been valuable, but the true treasure had been the spark of possibility it ignited, the reminder that breakthrough solutions often exist where we least expect them, waiting not for genius but for persistence, integrity, and the courage to see opportunity in desperation. As the wheels touched down on American soil, Rebecca thought of all the other struggling communities, all the other abandoned buildings, all the other desperate individuals standing unknowingly at the threshold of transformation. Their story wasn't just about what they had discovered beneath one hospital floor. It was about the potential waiting to be unlocked everywhere, if only we have the vision to recognize it and the courage to pursue it. The condemned hospital that had once represented her absolute rock bottom had become the foundation for a medical revolution that would improve countless lives for generations to come. In the process, it had taught them all the most valuable lesson in both medicine and life: that healing begins not with technology but with hope, the unwavering belief that even our darkest moments can contain the seeds of our greatest contributions. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.